Hello, and welcome to my research project, promoting engagement in 7th grade girls learning guitar via social emotional learning in music education. My name is Kelsey Lewis, and I'm a music teacher in the middle and upper school at Stewart Country Day School of the Sacred Heart, which is located in Princeton, New Jersey. So, first, I want to give you a little overview as to what my project was about. My action research explored how the utilization of social emotional learning in music education could impact student engagement and their sense of belonging within the classroom. And this applied to 7th grade girls learning guitar in music class. In consideration of how the pandemic influenced kind of a global reset in our world of education, I knew that I wanted my action research to explore this intersection of music and mental well being. Through the targeting of specific SEL standards, I wove SEL informed activities into my existing core music curriculum, and I wanted to see if this would have an impact on student engagement or their sense of belonging. Overall, the findings of this study provided insight into the efficacy of SEL teaching practices and the importance of creating a supportive learning environment. This research was conducted as part of the 22-23 Global Action Research Collaborative, a teacher researcher program led through the International Coalition of Girls' Schools. So, now I want to talk just a little bit about what led me to this research question. Now that it's been about 3 years post onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, educators have had a bit of time to reflect, recover, and reassess the new landscape that makes up education. The 2023 GARC research topic prompted us to take stock of what we have learned about ourselves as educators and our students as learners over the past few years. Throughout this global reset in education, what has stuck with us? What tools and pedagogical strategies have become useful and resonated with girls in their spaces of learning? Thinking back to the height of pandemic, illness, and restrictions, I found myself and my music educator colleagues shifting curriculums and lesson plans away from what was designed to be in person to lessons that were designed with the goal of just keeping students engaged and connected with each other. Knowing that we were collectively in the midst of this pandemic crisis, my immediate instinct was to really focus activities on community building and helping students bridge connections between music and mental well being and each other. So, fostering community belonging and student well being are also core tenets to the philosophy of education at Stewart. This is also guided by the Sacred Heart values of faith, intellect, social awareness, community, and personal growth. As a school that is committed to educating girls for lifelong exceptional leadership and service, I know that the skills my students build within my classroom will shape how they approach challenges as adults, both academically, socially, and emotionally. So, if I could name one of my biggest takeaways from pandemic teaching, it is that student mental well being is of the utmost importance, as well as having care and attention towards building social emotional skills in the classroom. The journey of settling into our new version of normal has proven things like trauma informed education frameworks and social emotional learning frameworks are really practical strategies to help equip students for greater social and academic outcomes. And teachers should really work to harness this within their lessons as best they can. As I explored ways to both specifically and organically integrate SEL standards into my lesson content, I wondered if and how the efficacy of this work could be measured. How could I find out what students are connecting to and why? Using this action research as an opportunity to document my cyclical process of planning, acting, developing, and reflecting, I wanted to see if I could measure whether my SEL framework was effective. And I wanted to use student engagement and their sense of belonging as markers for this success. This led me to my research question: How does incorporating social emotional learning methods in music education impact engagement and sense of belonging in seventh grade girls as they learn guitar? Next, I want to give you an overview of the main takeaways of my review of literature. Data shows that the well being of girls and LGBTQ youth, which was already operating at an extreme gender gap pre pandemic, worsened even more disproportionately throughout the beginning years of the pandemic. Robust literature over the past 2 decades has linked adverse childhood experiences directly to adult physical health, well being, and opportunity. This confirms that our students' childhood experiences shape the future of their lives. One thing that is important to emphasize is the role of positive childhood experiences in actively countering these adversities because it helps students develop resilience. We need to find ways to provide these experiences for our young people, especially during difficult times. That's where social emotional learning, or SEL, comes in. SEL is a global educational initiative intended to equip students with skills that are crucial for personal and academic success. The Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, or CASEL, since its founding in 1994, has become one of the leading organizations in the US to define the field of SEL with new research and initiatives. CASEL defines 5 key competencies of SEL: self awareness, social awareness, responsible decision making, self management, and relationship skills. Music, and actually all arts education, is a real ideal medium for promoting these. But it's not enough to just assume that students will naturally pick up on these skills through our classes. Literature broadly shows that we need to be very explicit and intentional in our approach to SEL for it to be effective, and also that it's most effective when integrated naturally into existing academic curriculum. So, what tools can we use to incorporate SEL into arts education? The New Jersey based organization Arts Ed SEL developed an incredible guide which provides arts educators tools to do just that. This guide combines the National Core Art Standards with the 5 SEL competencies, and it helps teachers pair standards as they plan lessons. There is a wealth of literature which advocates for and guides the use of SEL in music education. And across the board, successful integration of SEL results in better student engagement, well being, and sense of classroom community. However, there is still little research that explains how exactly to yield best results. So now we get to the fun part, the action part of my action research project. Working within my established music curriculum, where I taught introductory guitar to 22 seventh graders, I wove in additional activities that met both social emotional learning and music education standards. These activities became short class segments of about 15 minutes in length that would be dispersed throughout the guitar lessons to augment the learning experience of the other lesson content. So, I thought that it would be kind of fun to give you a little example of what one of these routine activities might look like. We are going to do a short song clip of the day together. The goals of this activity are to practice our critical listening and analysis skills. We are going to be using emotional vocabulary and music vocabulary through the use of some visual guides. First, I want you to take a look. Now, I want you to take 60 seconds and listen to this music clip. As you listen, feel free to choose 1 to 3 words from the screen or make up your own that you feel resonate within the music or within yourself as you listen to the music. The more specific the emotion, the better. What about the music makes you gravitate to the emotions you chose? Could it have something to do with the instruments you heard, the tempo, maybe the dynamics? Let's dive deeper into these musical characteristics. So now, instead of an emotions wheel, we have replaced the words with elements of music. It kind of works the same. The more further out you move on the wheel, the more specific the words get. So let's just go over the main categories. Tempo means how fast or slow the music is going. Dynamics are how loud or soft the volume is. Texture represents the layers of sound that you hear. Pitch is how high or low a sound is. Rhythm is how the sounds and silences are organized throughout time. And timbre really describes the tone of or the color of the sound that you're hearing. Let's listen to this clip for a second time. Using this wheel of musical elements, see if you can find 1 to 3 musical characteristics that you hear and try to notice them in more detail this time. How does what you noticed this time around relate to the words that you thought of the first time you listened? I'm going to explain a little bit of my own personal interpretations just so you get an idea of what a conversation might look like. So, the emotions that I initially gravitated towards when listening to this music what were the emotions energized, determined, aggravated, weeping, and unresolved. After listening for the second time, I was able to kind of trace the musical elements that represented these emotions that I wrote down. The aggravation of the rhythmic repetition in the cello and the double bass that we heard at the beginning is juxtaposed with this weeping monophonic violin melody over top of it. And this poses a great opportunity to talk about the duality of mixed emotions and how they can exist simultaneously and feed off of each other. And they combine with the piano to kind of generate this driving force. And that builds into a final cadence that ends on a dominant 5 chord, which leaves the listener feeling unresolved and unsatisfied. So, anyway, that's my own musical interpretation and kind of how I explain those emotions that I came up with. I hope that that activity gave you a little bit of insight as to the musical appreciation that I try to develop and create through these conversations. By the way, that musical example was written by an Icelandic film composer named Johan Johansson, and I love using film and video game music clips for these activities because they tend to have a really big emotional and dramatic arc within a relatively short amount of listening time. So, finding movie score clips are perfect for this. So, this is just one example of a short activity that I might incorporate into our lessons. And here are all the national art standards and SEL standards that are kind of paired together within this activity. Some of the other activities that I incorporated into my lessons addressed things like performance anxiety before playing guitar assessments, lyric analysis of song assignments, goal setting, and also our daily affirmations jar. I want to talk a little bit more about our daily affirmations jar because it became one of the most powerful tools in my classroom, and it was by far the most anticipated thing at the beginning of every class. Students had the opportunity to write each other anonymous notes of encouragement in a jar. At the start of every class, I would select a few notes and read them out loud. Here's an example of an affirmation written by a student to their classmate. You are very persistent. You are a very kind and friendly person to everyone you meet. Thank you for being you. Writing and hearing and receiving affirmations from classmates had an incredible impact on student confidence, which students identified as having a positive effect on their motivation to engage for the rest of class. In response to our daily affirmations activities, student C writes, I feel like I can get things done knowing that people write affirmations for me and that people care for me. Another student writes, affirmations give me a reminder that I'm actually good at something, and it gives me motivation to do my best in class. Overall, developing these peer-to-peer relationships is crucial for student engagement and success in the classroom. This is especially true for those students who don't necessarily identify strongly with the content of the actual music lessons. Students who initially displayed negative attitudes towards learning guitar and a lack of confidence during assessments, they actually showed the strongest improvements throughout this SEL work that we did. And I think that's partly because when students come to music class, there's a wide variety of musical skills and backgrounds that each student has. Not all students actually identified as musicians when they first walked in the door of music class. My data shows that. And by the end, all of them at least improved or at least came to a neutral standing in terms of how they identify their musical skill set and the confidence that was displayed in their assessments and their journal responses and all the other ways that I collected data. Overall, when I was incorporating these SEL activities in my lessons, my students did have overall increased engagement, increased productivity, and a better sense of success from their own perception, which I think is really important. Another thing that was kind of a conclusion of my study is that developing routines that are predictable and that students actually look forward to is really helpful in naturally promoting engagement and making students just more comfortable and psychologically safe because they know what to expect and there's a little bit more consistency with the structure of lessons. So in conclusion, fostering peer support, predictable routines, and lesson segmenting through these SEL activities are really strong tools to help students define their perception of success while learning guitar. Creating a supportive learning environment and utilizing these teaching practices are really important for student success and will definitely encourage engagement and have them just feel like they belong in more of a classroom community. Moving forward, my journey with this SEL work in music is definitely not over. It's definitely just the beginning. I'm very excited to continue developing and improving and implementing this with other grade level music curriculums as well. And in the future, I would love to see, I think this work is highly, highly applicable to all arts disciplines and would love to see this be branched out from our visual arts to our dramatic arts and all the different arts that our students at Stewart are involved in. I think another really important point to make in all of this as well is that as a music teacher, um, I get the privilege of working with kids from fifth grade all the way to 12th grade. So I get to see kids from year to year to year and continue fostering those relationships, which I think is really unique because not every teacher gets that opportunity. So I think that makes this work even more special and more just important for arts educators to consider how specifically and intentionally are we creating SEL informed activities that combine with our art standards and kind of work for our art standards as well, which I think is what kind of the whole point of my research project is that this SEL work really does help productivity and engagement, and it helps better musical outcomes and helps us achieve a better sense of musical success and what it means to be a musician and a community. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I'm going to leave some contact info up on the screen in case you want to get in touch or have any questions for me. I just wanted to say I am so grateful for the opportunity to explore this research in a way that has been really effective and meaningful for my students. This action research journey has empowered me with the tools to understand how to develop and document this cyclical process of planning, acting, developing, and reflecting, as outlined by Mertler, which is the book we had to read for this project. These tools have changed the way that I see education and my role in the classroom. I see myself continuing to use these methods of action research whenever I'm considering new strategies or trying to measure how effective something is for my students. I also just want to recognize the leadership of Stewart Country Day School for allowing me the opportunity and the support to be part of this GARC fellowship. And I would also love to thank my arts colleagues from Stewart and the greater Princeton community. Also, the Stewart class of 2028 literally could not have done this without you guys. So thank you so much.